The Summer of a Stalker. Long-time lurker, first-time. Long-time lurker, first-time. The Summer of the Stalker. Long-time lurker, first-time poster, all that jazz. While I was a witness to a number of events with the individual in question, I would like to note that the majority of the unsettling behavior and stalking was directed to my coworker and friend at the time, Carolyn. She and I became close friends during the summer in question, and while we have since gone our separate ways, we do keep in contact every now and then. And after reading several posts on this sub, I asked if I could share this experience. She agreed, but out of respect to her and to protect both ourselves, I will leave out some more direct details. Having witnessed the behavior firsthand on many occasions, I understand her hesitation and her terror. So on to it. This is going to be rather in-depth, since there were several encounters over the summer. It was a few years ago now. I live in a medium-sized college town and worked at a nearby grocery store. It was small and had been in the community for years, so there was a lot of regulars. Some important backstory with the area. While the town was removed in a sense from the major city, there was a bus line that went directly from the largest city to this town, and it just so happened to drop off right by our store. As it goes with some public transit, especially in this area, there were several homes and transient people that got off the stop and would come to the first place with food and drink and a place to wait, our store. I have several creepy encounters with this place, and may post some later. I worked at the store for almost a year and a half as a cashier, then was promoted to supervisor. Carolyn had been working there for several years before me, but we were about the same age. I am a male in my mid-20s now. Carolyn is very attractive, friendly, and vivacious woman. She was a pleasure to work with and is a good friend, but she has also attracted a lot of unwanted, unwarranted attention, especially during night shifts. Carolyn has a good head on her shoulders and is an expert at dealing with the creeps and the leering jackasses. This guy, he was a whole other story. It started in late June. I come onto a shift. I usually work closing shifts because of the school schedule, and during a tag-up meeting with the morning supervisor, Megan, I was informed to make sure I hit the break schedule. Our store was small, and yet still incredibly busy with college and the local community, so we had to balance schedules and breaks and tasks really well, and things could change any moment. We had a clipboard with the people on the front end for the day, and the estimated break schedule. It also had their in and out time. I asked Megan why I had to hide it, and she informed me that some guy had been hanging around, and she had caught him twice leaning over the register to look at the schedule. Our store had a big cafe in the front, so it wasn't uncommon for people to linger, sometimes hours at a time. This was especially true for the homeless who had nowhere else to go. As long as they weren't causing any trouble, we had no reason to kick them out. Anyways, as the night progressed, I noticed a lanky dude with incredibly thick and greasy hair sort of just wandering around. He would walk up and down the aisles, then go to the cafe with nothing and sit and stare at registers, then mosey on outside to the outside tables and repeat. After about 2 hours of this, I approached and asked if I could help him, expected him to say no and scarper off. I was taken aback when he moved extremely close to me and asked, "Is Caroline working today?" Per our policy, and I believe in some places the law, we do not divulge schedules. I would usually answer if they were currently there, as sometimes we worked directly with vendors, had meetings. That was clearly not that, and I already had a handful of people wanting to specifically stand at Caroline's line and chat with her, leer at her, and prevent her from working. She was usually good about giving codes with the habitual creeper came in, and I would give her a task to go in the back room and count inventory. I was on edge with this guy, so I told him I could not divulge that information. He looked ready to spit on me. He was also a good 6 inches taller than me. Though I'd probably take him if push came to shove. But I left. I told Caroline about it later, and though she didn't say anything, I could tell something about this set her off. She was quiet the rest of the night. About 2 weeks later, we're doing late night inventory, so we're working way past closing time at 11 p.m. I have myself and 2 other relatively newbies working with me. There were other people from other departments doing inventory, but the bulk of it was on us. At around 1 a.m., while we are neck deep in counting, the store phone starts to ring and ring and ring. Normally we wouldn't answer, but I guess store management did, and that was that. 5 minutes later, it rings again. Someone else answers. Then again. I didn't think much of it until it rang a 4th time and I picked up. I answered to say that it was past our operating hours and to try again in the morning. There was heavy breathing on the other line, and when I said hello, this raspy voice that was super familiar asked if Caroline was working. I said it was past hours and was about to hang up when he shouted, "Tell me when Caroline works next, or I'm gonna come down there and slice your fucking throat, asshole!" Needless to say, that pushed the line. I had no idea this was the same dude, but I got a familiar chill. I immediately hung up, told management, and we proceeded to call the cops. We had this a lot when drunk homeless people would wander in and see or get violent. The local cop, Jim, helped, so we had him come by and do a few patrols. That was about it. About an hour and a half later, as we were wrapping up, the creepy dude is at the door, banging on holy on the door, screaming at us to let him in. There were about 5 other people near the door, all burly men, and they chased him off. I called Jim, and he said he would do another sweep. I told the guy he had come in earlier that month, asking for the same girl. Of course, after that, we made some changes. Caroline was notified. I have issues with some of the store management, but they were really good about keeping us safe. She requested day shift only, which we tried to accommodate as best we could, but I didn't write the schedule, and our direct team manager had the balls to be an ass and would sometimes schedule people when they requested they couldn't work. She often paired me with Caroline, since we were the fastest workers and could get the closing duties done early, so they could save like 30 minutes on labor. Whatever. There were some other minor incidences, I guess, with him coming in, but he was quickly booted out of management. There was one incident where some dumbass on our team answered the phone and gave this dude Caroline's whole schedule for the week. We had been told not to tell the team why the guy was not allowed in, because it was private, but Caroline ended up telling them, much to the chagrin of our team manager. When that happened, he was there every day. I ended up trading some shifts with her as a cashier and not a supervisor, just so that she could get some peace. After a few months of this guy really harassing her at work by lurking and waiting for her to get off, it just kind of stopped. Really suddenly, Caroline didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't press, as even though we were close co-workers, it wasn't my business. So in about late August, she's closing with me and we're having a good time, as it was a super slow night. She offers to take care of some duties while I count drawers and close them out. A difficult and somewhat nerve-wracking process, as I had to have the drawer of money out in plain view. One of the cashiers stayed on register to help any customers, while Caroline wipes down the cafe and does the normal closing duties. I, to this day, do not know what made me do what I did next, but I'm partly glad I did, and partly terrified. Caroline was collecting the trash from around the front end and getting ready to take it out back. In the middle of the drawer, being out with money askew, I get this gut feeling that something isn't right. I told her to stop and that I'd take out the trash. She gave me a weird look, like I was saying she couldn't physically do it, which of course wasn't true. I just felt a sense of unease. She didn't complain. Taking out the trash to the nasty dumpsters out back wasn't like a trip to Disney World after all. I threw the money back in the drawer and locked it, and grabbed the trash to take it out back, while Caroline finished cleaning, and Jessie was on the register. The alley where the trash went was pretty fucking awful, smelled bad, and despite our best efforts, was always messy. We shared it with a few other businesses, and with the constant wave of homelessness and other things, we had frequent dumpster divers. As I was walking down the loading ramp, I heard some noises by the recycling dumpster, but figured it was a raccoon or something, as the alley ended near a big ditch in Raven with a little creek. Raccoon City, really. As I'm throwing away the trash, some figure darts out into the alley and blocks off the amber glow of the sodium lamp. I look up, startled. It's this dude. He was wearing a really large hoodie despite the warm weather, and had his hands tucked into the front pocket. His head was bowed slightly, so he wasn't looking right at me, but I instantly knew who it was. I'll never forget that look of hunger or malice in his eyes, like his obsession with Caroline had consumed every ounce of humanity in him and turned him sour. We hadn't had a problem in weeks, and we were all under the impression he was gone, based on things Caroline had hinted at. This guy saunters forward and asks if he can bum a cigarette. I don't smoke, and clearly would not do so on the job. Plus, I had hands filled with dripping garbage bags. He knew I knew who he was, so I don't know why he pretended to not know me. I told him he knew he was not wanted here and to leave, and that I was going to call the cops again. The movement towards me was so sudden I barely had any time to react. Pouncing forward, hands jumped out of pocket and onto my shoulders, pushing me against the wall. His necks were throaty and pained, almost as if he was crying in anger. "Are you fucking Caroline? She's mine. Keep your fucking hands off my woman." I shouted out of fear and anger, and I guess the manager who was in the back room heard it and came running outside. Dude bolted like a bat out of hell, down the Raven and into the creek, where we think he waded through the big pipe down to where there was a small park he could hide out in. I was so terrified and damn near had a panic attack in the back room. The store manager called the cops and told Caroline what had happened. She broke down and was sobbing uncontrollably. I called her boyfriend, Ian, and asked them to come get her. that she was okay to leave for the rest of the night and didn't need to finish her shift. Jim came out, did a look but couldn't come up with anything. The store leadership talked to Caroline a few days later, and I guess she didn't want to talk much about the guy. We all got the sense that something was up. I filed a report, but my boss, the crappy team manager, told me I shouldn't make another one and definitely shouldn't press charges because it would come back to bite him in the ass legally, whatever the hell she meant by that. Caroline quit soon after. I don't blame her, none of us did. Despite mine and a few other managers' best efforts, she just wasn't feeling safe at work and kept insisting that there was nothing we could do. I didn't see her for another 7 months. She pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth and online. I know this is getting super long, but there's one last thing that really nails how twisted this guy was. Eventually, while running errands in the city on my day off, I bumped into Ian while out shopping. I asked him how things were going, as we had become rather friendly from the several times he had to come in to get Caroline. He said things had been better and that Caroline was getting back to feeling safe. I didn't want to try, but he let me in on what had been happening. Apparently, the guy was an old friend of Caroline's. He had been at a party and met Caroline and had been really friendly, almost too much so. He friended her on Facebook, and I kept rather quiet, messaging her here and there and wanting to chat. She made it clear that she was dating someone, and he seemed to ignore this and quickly got more aggressive in wanting to just hang out with her. Caroline didn't want to cause any problems with their mutual friend, so she didn't unfriend this guy, but did do what she could to turn off chat so he couldn't bug her constantly. She tried to prevent him from contacting her without unfriending him, as she was sure this would really set him off. She, as I said, was very friendly and didn't want to cause any more problems. It didn't work. He had apparently kept sending her flowers and stuff to her house, calling her from unregistered numbers. How he got her number, she still isn't sure, and sending almost half-hourly messages on Facebook. Then he snapped. He went postal on her Facebook, tagging his name on pictures of any guy, including her boyfriend Ian as himself. He would then post comments like, "She and I are meant to be. Give me the strength to kill him," in reference to some picture where he was kissing Ian. "We will be together for eternity," etc. Really disturbing stuff. She blocked him. Her friend talked her out of getting a restraining order for a while, but she ended up getting one after he attacked me in the alley. And that's about it for this guy. I never saw him again after the night, and I quit and moved out of the area a few months after Caroline did, partly because I was disgusted with my team manager and her lack of attitudes towards the events. She laughed when I told her initially this guy came in the alley, and partly because I had quite enough with crazy creeps. I visit that store now and then and to see some old friends, and I hope I'll never see that disgusting guy ever again. Summer camp in the South. This is my first post here. This experience still gives me chills to this day. I actually have a few other camp encounters that I can share if anyone is interested, mainly occurring along the AT with campers. North GA is a mighty interesting place. A few years ago, I worked at a Jewish summer camp in North Georgia. As many of you might know, Georgia is a fairly conservative state, as well as being predominantly Christian. There are small Jewish communities and a few summer camps. I'd say this camp was more culturally Jewish than it was religious. There were no religious requirements nor religious specific focus. Rather, it was a place for kids who were often in the minority to come to a camp that allowed them to meet other kids like themselves. Staff came from all over. We had many Australians, lots of Brits, a few Israelis, and people from various areas of the USA. Each night at around 10, most of the staff was able to go out on the town for a couple of hours. Enough staff remained behind to watch over the cabins. We rotated. This particular night, a group of about 5 of us decided to go to a local bar to grab a few beers. It had been a hot day and was a humid night, so we decided to sit outside on the patio. For some backstory on the town, generally we were extremely well received by the community, despite differences. We brought in lots of revenue for the town during the summer. We bought supplies at the local Walmart and often took the campers on tubing trips or occasionally out to dinner after a long hike on the trail. It was midsummer, so we've been out to the bars in the area many times already that session. The 5 of us sat at around a table, drinking and discussing the events of the day, as fellow employees typically would after work. About 30 minutes in, a white man in his 20s came up to our table. I distinctly remembered a jagged scar on his cheek, but I didn't think much of it at the time. He introduced himself, then told us that he was having a party that night at his place. "Anyone can come," he said. "Black, white, gay, straight." I found it odd that he'd open his speech with that disclaimer. Of course, the party should be open to everyone. Why did he need to specify? But we'd had all the beers and were pretty loose. He talked for a bit longer and nothing really seemed off. We were working at a camp in the area and couldn't stay out, so we'd probably be heading back soon. About an hour later, our group went out to the parking lot to get into the car. As we approached it, we saw the same guy come out of the shadows. He had a buddy with him with a shaved head. His expression was incredibly hateful. His eyes had changed. He pounded his fist into his hand, then took off his shirt and revealed a poorly inked SS tattoo. My stomach dropped. One of the bigger guys in my group, Kevin, immediately reacted by pulling a knife out of his back pocket. At summer camp, most of us staff carried knives and asked what they wanted. The original guy started shouting some anti-Semitic remarks and told us he was going to beat us down. Kevin started walking towards the 2 guys, but we pulled him back. He told us his buddies were on the way. Sure enough, some more guys started walking into the parking lot. It's all kind of blurry here. I remember jumping into one of the cars, pulling Kevin with us. It felt like we were surrounded, though there were probably only 7 or 8 of them. Rocks were thrown at the car. We sped off, my heart beating like crazy. We never went back to that bar. On a bright note, when we told the story to the competing bar in town, the bartender lined up 6 shots, cheered us, and said we'd always be welcome in his bar in that town. Had no more problems in the town itself, but when I took some campers on a 2-day hike up the trails, it was another story. The worst summer of my life. Hello. Just discovered this subreddit yesterday and decided to share my own story. This happened in the summer and started pretty much a year ago. I am a guy who spends a lot of time in my computer, probably too much. And my room back at my parents' place has a big window facing the road in front of the house. My computer is located next to the window, and when I'm sitting by it, I have that window to my right side. This means that if someone walks past the house, they can see me by the computer, and I often tend to look out the window whenever I see someone walking past in the corner of my eye. No big deal, right? So this all started when I noticed this woman, somewhere in her 20s, maybe early 30s, walking by quite often, at 5 to 10 times per day. No big deal, of course. She probably just lives nearby, I thought, which I later found out she did. This woman has a very uncomfortable look to her. It didn't look like she had a shower in a while, and she had this extreme smile to her face constantly, as if someone had stapled her face into that expression. I didn't think too much about it, until I noticed that she started to make eye contact with me. Since she walked by my window so often, I often caught her in the corner of my eye and unintentionally looked at her. Every time she got eye contact, she would start giggling and laughing uncontrollably. This went on for a week or two. I just thought she was mentally ill or something, and didn't think much about it. Then one day, she walked past an insane amount of times, as in 15 to 20 times in a couple of hours, and each time she was constantly looking into my window when walking by. This is when I started getting uncomfortable. After unintentionally getting eye contact again, I quickly turned my eyes to the computer again, only to see in the corner of my eye that she has stopped, standing outside my window and looking right at me, laughing uncontrollably with her creepy smile on her face. I quickly pulled the curtains and tried to ignore it when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door and there she is. I'm home alone and starting to get some very serious creeps. I was at the time babysitting my friend's poodle and pick it up to use it as some kind of protection. I say hi, and she responds with a very, very happy, "Hello!" She then says, "Now it's your turn." I have no idea what she wants, and only responds with, "Okay." She then starts laughing a lot, as in she just heard the best joke of her entire life. I start panicking and shut the door after quickly telling her to leave. I tell my parents when they come home, and it turns out that this woman is an old student of my mother's. She says that she is mentally ill and that I shouldn't worry. She is nice. Her visits outside my window continues every day, and I tell my parents again that I feel uncomfortable. They then try to talk to her to see what's up. My mom asks her why she does it, and she tells her that her and I have some kind of supernatural connection in our heads, and that her and I have conversations with each other through some kind of telepathic way. We are made for each other and madly in love. This is when my parents are getting concerned. Her visits continued on a daily basis, and we visit the police to see what can be done. Their answer is that we can't do shit. She often rang my doorbell, but I had the sense not to answer. I noticed that as time went on, she got worse and worse mentally. She started to show aggressive behavior against my parents when they asked her to leave. I've actually never seen my dad so uncomfortable and overprotective as he was at this time. He was worried as well. One day, something happened that was enough for me. It was Friday night, and I was home alone. I was watching TV and heard strange noises from the street. I peeked out the window, and there she was, outside the window, dancing, screaming, singing, and doing all kinds of strange things. I put the lights out in the house and pretended not to be home, but I could still hear her. She was outside still. My neighbors ended up calling me several times asking if I was okay, and I said I was, but I wasn't. I was scared. My parents were hours from coming home, and all I did was watching TV pretending not to be home. She stayed for an hour or two before leaving, and the week after, me and my parents decided to take action. We visited different mental hospitals, or whatever you call them, in my country, and tried to tell them what happened. But there was one problem. They didn't have her as a patient and couldn't help us. Neither could the police. To make the rest of the story short, this continued for the entire summer, and towards the end, she would often spy on our house, playing some sick game with a child she had started hanging out with. At this point, She was scared of us because she knew we had contacted the police and different doctors, and they were shouting such things as, "You see that house? Watch out for them and they'll call the police. Run!" And she and the child would run and come back minutes later, repeating the same thing. The police have visited our block several times, hunting her when she was clearly out of control. There are so many incidences I can tell you about this story, but it would take way too long to tell everything. I don't live at home anymore, and I haven't been bothered by her since, except at the time she tried to contact me on Facebook. That was my summer of 2012. Not the best of my life. Hello, this is Horror Studio One, and this is my unedited podcast. Hello, this is Horror Studio One coming to you once again with his unedited podcast. So today, without further ado, I'm going to share one of the craziest goddamn stories I have ever heard. And it actually isn't from myself. If you look at the title of this video, it talks about a true crime being committed, and the biggest witness to a crime is actually someone that is really close to me. And they just told me recently, I actually tried to get them to tell their own true story on my live stream that I just this past Sunday, but of course they were not able to make it. But maybe they're a bit shy coming onto the live streams, and I understand that, but I just had to tell this story. It's so epic. And with further ado, let me tell you guys. So basically, my personal trainer that I have at a gym, I'm not gonna say what gym, but he's a young dude. He's like around 20 years old. He's a shorter Asian male. And he's a really good trainer, though. He's super hardcore. That's what I like. He pushes me to do my best, and he doesn't slack off at all. He basically has this girlfriend of his who's actually is about to leave the country during this time, and this just happened like last week. And she was about to leave the country to go for a couple years in the States, to go to school. And before going, she was really stressed out. So my friend and his girlfriend decided they wanted to go meet up together in a location and maybe talk about their feelings and do a bit of the lovey-dovey kind of stuff, right? Since they're together. So basically, it's like 2 a.m, and my friend and the girlfriend decide, hey, let's go to a nearby park and just chill and talk about our feelings and emotions for a while, kind of thing. So you guys know it's summer night, They basically go to a park that's near the girlfriend's house. So it's around her complex, around her neighborhood kind of thing. It's a nearby park, and they go over and they sit down and they start talking. And it's around 2 a.m, 2 a.m. It's pretty late. And out of the blue, my friend and his girlfriend hear a gigantic boom sound, okay? So they look around, they're like, what the hell is that? I apologize. I correct that. They actually goddamn see this happen. Basically, what happened was a dude was driving a truck, was going through the neighborhood, and somehow hit this BMW car. So this dude, I'm not sure if he was backing up or, maybe he was playing Pokemon Go. Who knows what happened. He basically slammed into this Mercedes parked in front of this house. So my friend and the girlfriend witnessed this whole thing happen. guy just blatantly drives off as if, nothing has happened. And he wasn't like a truck driver per se. I thought he was until my friend later, he clarified with me. He said that the guy was basically like driving one of those, trucks that normal people would own as well, basically. So he drives off, and my friend and girlfriend are like, yo, what the hell? Let's go investigate, right? So they actually walk over to this Mercedes, and it's like the back portion of it is like totaled or something. Like it, and a bit of the roof I heard is like off as well. Like it's totally crazy. It was a huge sound, a huge crash. And they start following this truck, and they're kind of like tailing it on foot. And the thing was, because this happened in the neighborhood, basically, the guy that was driving that truck lived in the same neighborhood as the girlfriend and as the guy that drove the Mercedes. So they end up following that car, that truck, back to the guy's own house. And the guy, they're like standing there for a while as the guy gets out of the car, and the guy kind of like stares at the two of them, like Reddit let's not meet alert, like shit like that. And, he goes back into his own house kind of thing. And the girlfriend and my friend are like, what the hell should we do, right? They see the guy walking back into his own house. I guess he wanted to go out, maybe grab a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons or something, and then just had this accident, so he decided to go back into his own house. Basically, the guy and his girlfriend, they go back to the house where this Mercedes-Benz is parked in front of, and inside that house, they're having like a house party inside. So it's probably really loud, and it made sense that they didn't hear that large, boom crash sound. So the girlfriend and my friend, they ring on the doorbell, and some guy answers, and they're like, hey, is that Mercedes parked in the front? Is it yours? Or something like that. And the guy's like, oh yeah, it is. Are we being too loud? They thought it was like, cause they were having a party, they were really loud, the music, the people and stuff. But they're like, no, actually, we just witnessed this total accident, and the guy just basically took off. And of course, the guy looks at his car and was like, what the hell, right? And basically, what happens is my friend and the girlfriend and the guy that owns the Mercedes-Benz all call the cops, and they all walk back to the perpetrator's house. And basically, what he told me was that after the cops showed up, they kind of walked for a bit, and then they had to go because it wasn't really their business, and I guess it was really late by that time anyways. So my friend and the girlfriend went home, but they said that afterwards, if they needed any questioning, they would call my friend and girlfriend. And then what happened after that was basically he heard from the people that the guy was arrested or something like that for, hitting the car and just leaving like that. A good thing about this situation is even though the guy did see the girlfriend and my friend, because my girlfriend is leaving the country, his girlfriend is leaving the country in like a little while, it should be okay. Like, shouldn't be too bad. So he's not gonna like stalk her and kill her and, yo, you ratted me out, you hoe, or something like that. So that's not gonna happen. But yeah, that is the scariest shit. And he told me, like, I was like, wow, that is insane. And I told him, I was like, you got to tell that story on my stream. But of course, he didn't show up. And then maybe he'll come next week and tell it for himself. But I have to get this off my chest. It's such an epic story, in my opinion. How these guys went investigating in the middle of the night. Just see, it's like a movie scene. It's so cool. Like, they're just having an emotional moment, and then this shit happens, and then like, the theme of the whole thing should be that they learned a lesson or something like that, and they kiss at the end or some shit like that. Just me like thinking like a movie director or something, thinking this whole scene in my head. But basically, that kind of reminds me of one thing, and I told them an experience I had. For you guys that don't know, I've been driving for a while. I'm not the best driver. I've done some stuff in the past that I really regret. Going over speed limits that I really shouldn't be going over, and I always apologize for doing stuff like that. And I've actually changed because I've been getting older. When it comes to driving, I'm less reckless and more safety prone, which I'm kind of proud of myself. But about 1 year ago, my first time ever, actually, I crashed my car. It's so crazy. I was actually, going to the movies with my girlfriend, and then I basically parked my car in front of the movie theater because there was nobody, and because afterwards we were going to go to like a nearby bookstore for a few hours, for like a half an hour, and then come back to watch the movie, right? Because we were actually really early when we get to the theater, and we were in front of the movie theater, and then I was like, because there was no inside. We could see through the glass windows. I was like, hey, how about I go in and grab some tickets, and then we don't have to park the car because the only parking space was like very far away. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna run down, grab the tickets, and we can go to the bookstore and then come back and watch the movie in half an hour, right? And then my girlfriend was, she's a really sticks to the rules, which is really, I mean, commendable. Because to be honest, you're not really allowed to park there. It was just me being a dick. But I was like, hey, if you sit in the driver's seat, it would be okay because she knows how to drive as well, right? But she was like, no, let's not do that. Just go park and go get the tickets. And I was like, why do I have to do that? It just doesn't. I was just stay in the driver's seat. If there's another car that comes, just drive off. Like Jesus Christ. But she's not really confident with her driving, and I guess it was because it was my family's car. She didn't want to touch it. I don't know. Okay, and she didn't feel like going down to get the tickets or something. Okay, because I don't know. Okay, so she wanted me to go park in a spot. Walk a certain amount of distance, get the tickets, walk a certain amount of distance, and then drive off. Like she wanted that to happen. Okay. And I was disgruntled. I was like, okay, fine, I'll actually do that. God damn it. So I was actually kind of emotional at that point. I basically went into reverse and I didn't even look, okay? I just reversed and I kind of like rolled back and I rolled back into a fucking Mercedes, okay? And this happened, okay? It was like a bigger Mercedes car, and it was this older European gentleman and his two, I'm guessing, teenage daughters. They were like 17, 18 years old, and the three of them were there, and then they were just like, whoa, what just happened? But the impact wasn't great. It wasn't a huge impact because I didn't press on the gas pedal. I didn't do anything. I just kind of like rolled back. But I was an idiot. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't look in the mirror. I was like, okay, fuck. Like I just did that, and I really regret it to this day. But I did do that, and then I looked at the cars, like if there was any scratches or something like that, and there actually were no scratches. But the guy was telling me to pay him, I think like $200. Kept telling me like, oh, your insurance is gonna go up because you're under 25, blah blah blah. And I was like, no, man, it's cool. How about we go to our own insurance companies and we'll deal with that, because that's how you should actually deal with it. Is you go to an insurance company or you go to the cops. But because there was really no dent, and I think because it was like a I guess private property by the movie theater. It wasn't like on the road. We couldn't go to the police, and I think it was always because it was like a Friday night. I'm not really sure, but my memory is we didn't go to the police. I was gonna go to the insurance people on the next working day and get it cleared out by them. So I told him that, and then he kept on urging me to just pay him the $200 and just forget about it. But I was like, no, I made a mistake, but let's go to the insurance and get official people to look at this whole situation before I make any type of payment towards anybody, right? And I guess that's the fairest way to do this, because even if I paid you $200, I mean, I could have damaged more than $200 more worth than $200. The damage could have been $500, right? And if it is, then I'll pay the fine. But I want someone to inspect the whole situation before I do anything rash. So I told him, I was like, yeah, I'll give you a call Monday. I told him to give me a call Monday, and then we took down each other's information, all the driver's license, all that stuff. And then we went to watch the movie, and my girlfriend was really she wasn't happy the whole time. But we ended up watching the movie, and I told my dad later that night what happened, and he says, stuff like that happens all the time, especially in parking lots, I guess. Cars bumping into other cars, even though, yeah, this time definitely it was my fault. But the guy never ended up calling me back because honestly, there was really no damage on his bumper, man. It was like, he was just, I guess, kind of shocked and pissed that, I kind of rolled into him, but there was absolutely really no damage on that. It wasn't as bad as what my friend witnessed. Like, that was hardcore, and the guy left. So I actually just got out and just started apologizing to this man who was like pretty pissed off. Like, but good thing I had a good attitude. I said I was wrong, which I was. I was too emotional having an argument. So that was my mistake right there. But it just reminded me of that whole situation. And I'm not sure if I told this story on my YouTube channel before, but yeah, this just happened a very long time ago to me. And these days I just don't drive like that anymore. A lot more experience. And yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on my friend's story, because honestly, that is one of the most epic stories I have ever heard when it comes to accidents and witnessing a crime, and just he basically helped everybody solve this crime. Like, it's so cool, dude. What he did, he saved the guy a lot of money, and he saved the cops a lot of trouble. Ohio was named after the Ohio River, which means Great River in Iroquois. Also, being a birthplace of 7 US presidents, Ohio has a deep-rooted influence in American history. So let's hear 3 stories that take us to the past of America and the historical state's affiliation with ghosts. Intelligent haunt in Ohio. This haunting wasn't really caught until my brothers and I began moving out of our parents' home as we reached college age. The home was built in the 1870s. It began with my dad, who worked 3rd shift. He complained that when he'd arrive home in the morning, before we awoke, we were leaving dry paper cups in the bathroom beside the sink. After all of us denied doing this every single night, he joked, "Maybe we have a ghost." The first time I think was caught when we all denied it. Closed the door when he left for work and went to bed. He arrived home for work, and sure enough, there was a cup. My theory was the heat register, etc. Dad was convinced something odd was going on though. So one night, he pulled out a cup, placed it in the spot, then shut the door and went to work. In the morning, he found his cup flipped upside down with a new cup stacked on top. Okay, things are getting weird. Next, he draped a tissue over the spot. When he arrived home, the cup was in its usual place, with his Kleenex draped over top. This ruled out the register to me. Maybe someone in the house playing tricks? This option was ruled out for me when we went to dinner one night. I played a joke on my father by putting a cup in the spot, trying to trick him. He caught it before we left. We laughed, and then I put the cup away and shut the bathroom door. I also locked the front door on the way to the restaurant. Upon returning home, I opened the bathroom door and there was the entire cup dispenser pulled from the wall and sitting in the spot. My skin literally crawled. I was scared to death, as were the rest of my family. Somebody was reaching out to us and responding to our actions. It seemed like the more we recognized it, the more actions occurred. My dad eventually left a pencil in the spot. The next morning, there's the cup with his pencil balanced on top. Soon after, he began writing small notes. "Who are you?" etc. We'd often get very, very small check